Hi everyone, my name is Veronica Farias, and I am here to talk to you about the book that I researched, Now Discover Your Strengths. So, what about now? First of all, just start to think about, are you a social type of person? Are you, constantly referred to as a social butterfly or, a chatty Cathy? Or perhaps it's more, of competition that could be your thing, sports, contests, anything where one can win or lose. Or maybe you happen to be a type of person who's more reserved, let's say very disciplined. Well, communication, competition, and discipline are a handful of, about 34 themes in this book, Now Discover Your Strengths. Focusing on strengths rather than pointing out the negative in oneself and those surrounding us can be challenging for many, especially when you're a leader in a large organization. So, in Now Discover Your Strengths, the emphasis is placed on identifying the strengths and talents that you have, developing those, strengths, and actually, focusing on leveraging the strengths of those that you manage. Throughout this presentation, we're going to touch on a couple of things. We're going to cover individualization amongst associates, the basics of strength leadership, and overall developing a strength-based organization. In the management book, Now Discover Your Strengths, written by Marcus Buckingham and Dr. Donald Clifton, emphasis is placed on identifying the strengths of each individual. There's a total category of about 34 strengths, and it's also referred to in the book as signature themes. Tom Rath, actually, he's the writer of Strength Finder 2.0. He actually provides an assessment where the responses to the questions ultimately determine the top 5 strengths. So after you discover your strengths, you have to identify what are the next steps. Well, in this book, that's where the focus lies, and it also focuses on how to best leverage these. The book provides history from, where they researched the information and why they felt it was successful. Then it goes on to explain how to build your strengths. It provides you, testimonials from individuals with a specific type of strength related to you. And it also provides you with action items as to how to practice your strengths and, best leverage them, amongst yourself and within the associates. The second phase of the book actually focuses on the importance of, how to lead, how to be a successful leader. It provides leaders with tips on how to build relationships with associates, engage them, and then ultimately, build them up so we can have an organization filled with strong individual contributors. As mentioned, leading people can occur throughout any level of the organization, but, how do we do this successfully? Well, in this book, it provides information as to how to build, a strength-based organization with leading by example. This book teaches the importance to place, the focus on individualization. That means that you focus on the individual and what their individual strengths are instead of trying to not necessarily micromanage, but instruct the team to, function a certain way and to function as a unit rather than as an individual. So as a leader, it's the leader's responsibility, to help the associates not only identify their strengths, but also help them develop them and, help them grow individually and professionally. Like I mentioned earlier, this book offers several testimonials where different companies and leaders are evaluated and researched. In one example, it was actually a Best Buy organization. The new leader who came on board, he just took a very direct and blunt approach with everybody. He asked each associate who worked for him, if they were more of a people person or if they were a person who preferred to work, sort of behind the scenes. And after that, he focused on, dependent on their responses, he focused on moving associates to an area that would play up their basic strength or their preference. And then from there, he continued to continuously monitor each individual versus, the team as a whole, and to see what they were interested in, whether it was interaction with customers, whether it was, just kind of keeping to themselves and, just staying very focused and disciplined on the task. And from there, that would determine, what type of conversation he needed to have with the associate. And ultimately, in return, the associate would feel valued as an individual because, the leader is taking a direct approach with him versus trying to, just lump them up into one group. Another important lesson that this book taught me about leadership is not to take no for an answer. It's just basically to be more assertive. For example, the Gallup survey is taken on an annual basis over hundreds of organizations, and one of the questions that is ultimately included, or I'm sorry, is always included in there is, at work, do I have an opportunity to do what I do best every day? So if an associate, responds no, which is, it does happen from time to time, believe it or not, it's our job as a leader to identify why this is occurring. Ultimately, the individual at the end of the day is responsible for their direction. However, it's our job as a leader to help them identify strengths and have them grow. And according to this book, each person's greatest opportunity to grow is where their greatest strengths are. So as a leader, once we identify the strengths and what the individual associate likes to do, then it's our job to try to, give them stretch assignments related to that, or put them in certain scenarios where, if they like to interact with customers, then they need to be interacting with customers on a go-forward basis. And, if they prefer to, just focus on their tasks, then maybe not send them to so many meetings, etc. So that's where we need to place our focuses on. In Strength Finders 2.0, that's very popular amongst organizations nationwide. A lot of companies participate in this. However, there's so many books related to the 34 strength categories, and there's so many things piggybacking off of each other. So, how do we identify which book brings the most value to us? So first of all, this book provides a lot of great content. Ultimately, I decided to read this book instead of others that were recommended, because this was actually recommended to me by a professional colleague who participated in the original Strength Finders training with me. And after reading it, like I mentioned earlier, it includes a lot of, real life testimonials that are relatable to how we can address issues in the workplace versus something, out of the ordinary. It's day-to-day things that can happen. It provides a perspective from the leader, so, you get to see where there was an opportunity or how they addressed it. And just try to understand the leader's point of view. However, you can step back and take a moment to, just kind of look at the scenario as an individual associate. And then from there, it can kind of be evaluated and identify, areas for improvement, or maybe you can compare it to areas that, you're working on and how you could have handled it a little bit better. Ultimately, the book provided, very minimal tips as to how to direct a large group of associates. It's very focused on, the one-on-one relationship with the individual associate versus the, mass audience, and I feel like that's lacking in the book. Additionally, I felt that it provided good content, but, and how to develop a strong organization. So, ultimately, with that being said, the book is a great read overall. It provides great information on strengths. It helped me identify the strengths it helps you identify the strengths that you have, and not only, develop them, but also how to, develop the strengths of those we manage. And it places the focus on the importance of individualization and leaders being assertive, as well as just taking the direct approach with individual associates and just being transparent and very open and honest with them as much as we can be. And overall, this book is very beneficial. However, I would only, I think I'd hesitate from recommending the book to, a leader. I'd probably recommend a different book, but I think it's a great book overall, especially to individual contributors.